Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Controller Podcast, episode 356. My name is Benjamin Yoder, and I'm here today to talk to you about video games. We got news this week. Wow. When was the last time we had news? Probably like 2 weeks ago, or a month ago. It's really hard for me to tell like what happened when now because there's such big gaps between episodes that it feels like it's been forever since we've done something. But really, it's just that I had like one episode that was all Final Fantasy 11, and now it feels weird to come back to a normal show like basically a month later. But anyways, we're gonna talk about some news stories, some that's gonna be related to a geolocation game. So we're gonna talk about that. Love and Berry's got a collab going on. We're going to talk about that because of the Love and Berry anniversary still continuing. The life of Love and Berry continues today. It's just a heads up. I believe the DS capture card should be back in stock this week. So that is the final piece, as far as I'm aware, to me going on my Love and Berry beautiful journey pilgrim adventure. And look, man, we've been talking about Love and Berry for a long time. And I'm going to tell you this right now. I don't actually think I'm like that interested in Love and Berry as a video game. When I sit down and look at Love and Berry, it is very straightforward for the most part. It is very simple overall when you compare it. Like a Tokudoll is my favorite of that kind of style game because there's a lot going on with the Tokudoll, right? Stuff like Aikatsu and stuff I struggle with a little bit more just because, you know, it is fun. I enjoy it, but I don't have the investment I have into like a Tokudoll where you're like building these kind of battling dolls and things like that based off fashion. And I really like the style of a Tokudoll, right? It's like a lot of Lolita fashion where a lot of these other games are built around more modern styles or you know, more fashion-y kind of stuff that is not like more specific, right? So in saying that, that's not me saying that I shouldn't be doing this. I mean, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, but you know, I think I'm looking at this as a very much like a Super Metroid kind of situation where like Love and Berry specifically, I have a history of Love and Berry, but like I don't actually have a great direct attachment to Love and Berry at this point. So playing Love and Berry, I think it's just important for me and maybe you to keep in mind that at the end of the day, like Love and Berry is a blank slate for me generally outside of just like, I know it's pretty simple. So I would not be surprised if we come out of Love and Berry, me being like, yep, that's about right. Which means, you know, nothing massive will happen at the end of our Love and Berry, you know, pilgrimage. But, you know, I think we've had a good time talking about Love and Berry, covering Love and Berry. And, you know, I've had a history with Love and Berry generally. So it's just kind of fun to follow it still. So anyways. And then we got a little bit of a crypto talk. Not anything in depth. If anything, it's just kind of a quick update because I noticed some things this year with the crypto convention stuff going on. If you don't remember, crypto convention stuff happened last year. We talked about it. We had a bunch of like company quotes and stuff. It was really interesting to see why they were still investing in crypto after the market kind of fell out. This time, we don't have a lot to talk about, but that might be a good sign of something. So we'll be talking about that too. And then also I'll be talking about a doujin indie game. That's like from my Comic Cat trip. So, you know, if you've been following my Works Plus channel, I've been kind of covering doujin games there, but I'm going to talk about them on the podcast a little bit here as well. So if you're familiar with those videos I've been doing, that's what this is basically. Going to give you some updates on some of my video stuff, big video stuff like the Nintendo video and stuff like that. And then finally, just in time for the end of the summer season, we're going to talk about an import Wii game that is a Japanese festival game. It's very cool. I really liked it a lot, so I hope you stick around and listen to me talk about that. But first and foremost, let's get back to those news stories we were talking about. Per usual, especially the games that I are introducing the show almost as if they're announced now. That doesn't mean they necessarily were announced now. It just necessarily means that I am finding it now. That game, in this particular case, is a geolocation game called Disney Step. This is basically a Disney kind of, you know, I feel like I'm saying geolocation right now. I feel like there's another name for them, so sorry if I'm messing this up. But, you know, Pokemon Go, Dragon Quest Walk, those kind of things, right? But basically, they have a Disney-themed version of this, and it has a very cutesy style. It kind of reminds me of like the Disney Dreamlight Valley game visually, but a lot more like chibi. or maybe not chibi, but like shrunk down. Everybody's just like a little bit more squished down than normal, so they look a lot more cutesy in my opinion, versus like the more, I don't want to say realistic look, but the kind of like realistic proportions kind of character in Disney Dreamlight Valley kind of thing. But yeah, you basically go around your local town or city, in this case, a Japanese town or city. And you look for Disney themed treasure and stuff like that. So I didn't really look too deeply into like the actual gameplay loop or anything like that. But I'm gonna guess, if you've played one of these games before, like I have not, then you probably kind of know what to expect from this. I'm gonna guess you basically have little places where you can do collaboration events with people. And then like you go to different places to get different treasures, just kind of encourage you to kind of go out and walk and things like that, right? So Pikmin Bloom, another good example of this, right? Everyone I think is kind of built on similar foundations, just kind of tweak the formula a little bit in different ways. So yeah, I think I don't know, maybe this isn't in the US already. So I don't keep up with mobile games. Maybe I should have just done a Google search on this first before I just kind of talked about it. But either way, whether it's Japan only or not, doesn't really matter. They had a closed beta test, and then it sounds like they're going to go ahead and launch it, I think at the end of this month. I think I saw it was the 27th or something like that, but double check. But yeah, if it's not out in the US, I'd be curious. I never know like if these games work in other regions or if they have to manually place things around the place or whatever like that, right? But I think whenever a mobile game comes out in Japan, I'm always just kind of curious to see like how it does. I was looking at it earlier, and I could be wrong, but I feel like the Sensory Tower data updated a little bit. So I think I could be wrong. I had to go back and look. I did not look at this. This is like something I'm literally looking at, as I'm pulling up on the podcast, basically. But they show you the ranking for the week. So this is a week-by-week list. So number 1 this week, Uma Musume Pretty Derby. And then it says the last week rank, which was rank 14. If you don't know, these kind of mobile games have this kind of like pretty wide variation of ranking on this list. So it's kind of like NPD. You don't get any really direct numbers, but you get to know the ranking on the list. But the one thing you did previously know, and I don't know, maybe this is where I'm like, I'm not sure if this has been changed or not. But the one thing that did previously show is the revenue growth week over week. You can see if it's positive, you can see if it's negative. In the case of Uma Musume, it's up 284%. The number I don't remember on this list is growth rate of downloads. So they actually show you the growth rate of whether or not, a game is growing at the same time as getting more revenue. So in the case of Mahjong Soul, ranked number 19, it actually has a 14% decrease in the growth rate of downloads, but it does have and I just lost the number. It was 19? Yeah, 65% increase in revenue for the game. So it's interesting to think about, what type of content is targeted where and what impact that has on the game in terms of like being able to see, does it bring more people in, or is it just kind of like pulling in more money from the existing player base that you have, right? I think that's kind of interesting. So anyways, just a side note I was looking into. That wasn't really meant to be a part of this, but when I was looking at it, as I was pulling up this Disney Step article, I was recognizing this list being kind of not 100% as I remember it, but I could be misremembering. But Monster Strike is number 2 on this list. Last week, Monster Strike was number 1. You know how old Monster Strike is? Gosh, man. These live service games, they don't go away. Puzzles and Dragons, number 9. Last week was number 6. I don't know, man. Live service games are weird things that I don't know how to digest. I don't know how to interpret, and I don't understand. Do live service games take away the traditional game audience, or does the live service game just appeal to a new audience, and then sometimes it takes up the time of like more traditional games? Because we're seeing industry where traditional game platforms are not growing, right? I don't think there's been any numbers put out for this year yet, but I believe the modern traditional game market is not growing at all, which is why, you have so many, or at least my understanding is why you have, so many games kind of try to get more money out of individual users rather than, sell to new users, because, hey, growth, you always gotta be growing, right? So anyways, yeah, I don't know. That's about the beginning and end of that. I thought Disney Step looked interesting. And then I started reading off percentages from a blog or a report about weekly mobile game revenue. Let's get back to video games. Love and Berry has a collab event. So if you don't know, this has been a Love and Berry, I believe 20th anniversary this year for Love and Berry. Been a lot of Love and Berry stuff going on this year. We've covered a bit of it here and there. I kind of stopped covering nearly as much of it because there was just kind of a lot happening. There's some Love and Berry sodas at a vending machine, at least one vending machine. Don't know if there's more than that. There's been Love and Berry cafes. There's been Love and Berry merchandise. There's been Love and Berry crane games and stuff at arcades and geekos and stuff like that, right? They've been putting out a bunch of new merch, all that kind of stuff. Blah, 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 blah. Love and Berry is having a collab event with a game that seems fitting, but it did kind of make me think a little bit about who gets the most benefit here. And that is, they are doing collab event with Pretty Rhythm. If you don't know, that is the Sin Sophia style savvy developer. Their arcade games are these kind of like dress up rhythm games, similar to the style of Aikatsu, if you're familiar with that. It gets abbreviated as like Prepara a lot of times. But recently in this latest version of Prepara, they split off the game into two different versions, which is basically one that's aimed at younger girls, typically, and that one is just kind of like you have a character card that you kind of move around the screen to basically like follow different patterns, and then you also have the traditional Pretty Rhythm arcade machines, which is more of the thing where you dress up your character. They have different categories of clothes based off if it's like, cute, beautiful, sexy kind of thing, right? And then you basically you go and play like a 3-button rhythm minigame kind of thing. So you dress up your character. You're building your own character. Or that original game you do, or that game aimed at younger girls. As far as I'm aware, you do not customize your own character in that case. But anyways, that being said, they are basically adding Love and Berry. I believe in some cases, it's hard to tell because I don't know the full set of assets because I only see Love and Berry themselves appearing in the game aimed at the older audience. So there's the actual Love and Berry character models. They pretty much just look like the Dreamcast character models like imported into the game, which you don't know, Pretty Rhythm has like this like stylistic, kind of like flat, clean anime shaded look. And then you have like Love and Berry with their like Dreamcast Naomi board looking hair in there. But in some ways I appreciate it for that. But yeah, I only seeing the those exact character models in that one that's aimed towards older girls. The I think it's called Pretty Rhythm Himitsu or something like that. Himitsu no Aipri is what it's called. They are it looks like it's mostly just the outfits on the characters. I could be wrong about that. That's all I'm seeing in the pictures. And it looks like the one aimed at younger girls has 4 unique character cards that are being made for it. And so, yeah, if I'm looking at this right, it looks like the Himitsu cards, which again, not the one where you build your own character as far as I'm aware. Those are just 4 of the characters dressed up in Love and Berry outfits is what it looks like. And that the screenshots reflect that. Look, I'm working off like a 4Gamer page in machine translation, and I only kind of skimmed this article, so we're just kind of looking at this thing. So I don't want to say any real certainty kind of thing. But anyways, but what it made me think a little bit about was who benefits and how in this situation, right? And I don't think I think about this too much with collabs, but there are some collabs that I've heard about in the past with like the Grand Blue Fantasy one where they crossed over with Final Fantasy 11, right? And Final Fantasy 11 got an uptick in player base that was pretty substantial, if I recall correctly, after that collab event. But meanwhile, I don't really know, is like Grand Blue Fantasy getting Final Fantasy 11 players in, or is there some other incentive for Square to do that collab event, right? Or is it reintroducing Final Fantasy 11 to like older fans, and then they'll be like, oh yeah, I love Final Fantasy 11, and they go back, or I love, how am I presenting this? No, that's still benefiting Final Fantasy 11. So like, how does it benefit Grand Blue fans? I guess maybe if you're just like an old school Final Fantasy 11 player, you don't play Final Fantasy 11 today, but you're like, oh, I could play Grand Blue, and it has Final Fantasy 11 characters in it, right? Maybe that's what the thought is. Maybe so. I don't know. So I guess in my head, I was thinking about that in the same way with like Love and Berry. Like, what is Sega's benefit to doing a collab event with Pretty Rhythm, right? Building the brand. But like, are you converting young girls into Pretty Rhythm or to Love and Berry fans? Like, what are you converting them into? There's no game. There's no Love and Berry game today. And like, I'd be curious if they'd get the merch or anything like that either. So I don't know. But obviously I think it's a very real benefit to Pretty Rhythm in this situation where Pretty Rhythm, is going to get some of that bleed off from that older audience who love Love and Berry and maybe had stepped away from these kind of arcade games, and now they get to come back and play another game like this, and it's very similar in terms of its approach, style, and appeal in a lot of ways. I think based off what I've seen of both games. I actually have not played a lot of Pretty Rhythm. I've played a little bit of it. Aikatsu and Pretty Rhythm are games that I think I want to like more. And it's probably gonna be true to Love and Berry to some extent. It's like I probably want to like it more than I actually do like it. Anyways, either way, that's our Love and Berry segment. Go check it out. The collab event is starting October 3rd. Are you in Japan on October 3rd? Go play Pretty Rhythm to the song ABCD Daijobu. Daijobu. Anyways. And obviously, right after talking about games for girls, we gotta talk about crypto stuff. The audience overlap, we just gotta put it close enough in the episode so the audience overlap is there, right? Anyways, so if you don't remember, last year we were talking about a bunch of crypto events that were going on. Maybe not a bunch, but a crypto event going on. And I don't know if it's the same one as the one going on right now. But I was seeing a bunch of reporting happening on some Japanese websites about WebEx 2024 is what it is. And it is basically a Web3 conference. And they're having various kind of stage presentations and stuff. Like, what is the future of crypto? What is the future of NFTs? How to do these things? Like the Game Developers Conference of Web3 crypto stuff. Probably some business talk in there as well, right? Previously, we pulled from a pretty substantial stage show where basically Square Enix, Bandai, Namco, and Konami, and I believe maybe Sega. I don't remember for sure on that one, but I believe maybe Sega just came up in the context of the event, but weren't necessarily there. But I believe they were all there, and they gave their thoughts on like what Web3 meant to them, what crypto meant to them, what NFT games meant. Bandai Namco talked about their Gundam Metaverse stuff a little bit and things like that, which obviously kind of went in its own way. I don't know if it's been successful or a failure, but I know the initial feelings was not great on it. But anyways, so the thing I noticed this year though is, I just kind of pop these articles open, just start skimming through, and mostly I'm just kind of looking to see if there's any names I recognize. And I will say, I did not really see any game developer names I recognize. Now that's not to say that crypto games weren't there. They definitely were, but I wasn't really seeing the Square Enixes, the Sonys, the Segas, and all those kind of companies. Sega did come up, but it was in relation to a partner they had that I don't think they were really directly involved in this event specifically. But the only company I could find being there, which is interesting because last year, these seemed like the most conservative group out of this whole set, was Konami. And Konami is there, and they are participating they did participate in the talk about like what is the future of like NFT and Web3 gaming. I didn't find a transcript of that presentation to see exactly what was being said there, but most of the other companies on that stage, from what I recall seeing, were companies that for the most of us, they probably aren't that relevant. If you have listened to our show long enough, you might be familiar with Double Jump Tokyo. Double Jump Tokyo has basically played a big role in doing NFT games for a lot of these big companies, including Sega, including, I believe, Konami, and including Square Enix. And so they were there. But, the actual publishers themselves, as far as I can tell, other than Konami, just weren't quite there. DMM was there as well. DMM has a DMM crypto division. I don't really know, how that's been coming along or not. And I didn't check to see. Bandai Namco had a fund last year for this kind of stuff. But I don't know if they're still continuing that fund or not. So, anyways. That was that. I just think it's kind of curious to see. I think I'm interested in seeing how these companies peel back from these investments they make, right? And and whether or not, what are they waiting for? What are they willing to put money into? And what is their logic? And what is their messaging around it? But I think at this point, I think any company that was really riding high on any kind of Web3 or NFT stuff and making acquisitions based around that, developing projects based on that, I think any of those companies that have other means of normal revenue coming through, that is that they are just kind of, peeling away finally. I could be wrong about that. Square Enix still has Symbio's Genesis out. I saw that they're in their chapter 2 or chapter 3, I think, season right now. Which I did tune into one of their streams because I was kind of curious what they're doing with that game, because as far as I can tell, there's no direct gameplay. But it is basically, if you don't remember, Symbiogenesis is basically this whole idea that there's a world. So if you go to the website, there's a whole world map. And then on the world, there's just tons of people all around this world. And any of those people are people that you can buy. And so you can buy whoever will be, the hero that saves the world kind of thing. But today, you don't necessarily know who that is, right? And I don't really know the benefit around all these different things. But from what I read, basically, the key benefits is that you got a chance to be a part of the story, basically with your purchased character. And then also when you buy characters, you get lore. And then so basically you go into the Discord channel afterwards. And it sounds like there's a bunch of little Discord mini games they play and stuff like that. But, none of this is actual video game stuff as far as I can tell. It's just basically community driven stuff that Square Enix or Double Jump or whoever's developing it is kind of running right now. But so they do that, and then the game itself is more or less, as far as I can tell, just this web page with a bunch of pictures on it. Now, so what's interesting about this live stream is just kind of trying to understand what exactly was going on in these very long 4-hour live streams. And what it seems like is basically just an auction where basically they go around all these people in the world. I don't know, it's all in Japanese, and I don't think they've bothered to translate it really, so I don't really know what's being said about these characters, but they highlight characters. They'll show the currency amount that they're worth, and usually it seems to be a couple $100. And then there's a couple, I think, that were a few $1,000s as well, and they would play little fanfares if people bought it and stuff like that. But it definitely felt like you going to an auction and just having somebody present an item to you. In this case, it is a character, and it's which one of these 12 soldiers in this brigade do you want to buy? Or you can buy the guy who's standing on top of this tower with a gas mask and a gun, and he'll be $2,500, and he's gonna have real special lore, something like that. So, yeah, they're still going down that line. Anyways, so one thing I've kind of maybe deciphered about why we keep talking about this crypto stuff, right? Because obviously I've iterated multiple times that I don't really have any interest in this. And I don't see any future forward for this kind of stuff. I don't know if I've ever really believed in it. I was curious because a lot of companies were talking about it, and there's a lot of different ideas people presented around it, albeit I think everybody who, is in the game space and knows how video games work were just even myself not really knowing how video games work was just this doesn't seem reasonable, smart, or maintainable. Everything about it just seemed weird. But I think what I realized recently is the whole reason I'm looking at this stuff is that there are still people engaging with this stuff, right? And I have to wonder why, right? Why are they doing this? And so I think what we're really saying is who is if you want to call them an investment gamer, and what do they want out of gamified investment, right? So gamification is a really weird thing that in some ways I think it can be very cool, right? I think education in gamification gamified education is something I super appreciate, right? Exergaming, right? Gamified exergaming stuff, right? And then, while it had to get removed because there were problems, there's the whole gamified tax return thing that people were thought was really interesting outside the fact that it asks for your social security number and stuff like that, right? You're putting sensitive information into this video game that, who knows where it goes and how it's processed, right? But anyways, I don't really know. Gamified investment. There's something about gamified investment in particular it seems off. And I think if I were to sit down and think about gamified investment, why it seems off, I think a lot of it has to do with gamification. I think in some ways is an emotionally manipulative thing, right? And then when you start involving money with it, it means you can be pretty easily manipulated to spend monies in ways you shouldn't. Like, and that's obviously everything these days, right? Like that's not necessarily a new thing. But I think that's the weird thing. It's like it feels like there's a lot of space to do harm with gamified investment. I don't know if that's actually true, right? We talked about with like the coin musume, where you have the characters, right? And it's like invest in your favorite girl, right? But just because you're investing in your favorite girl doesn't necessarily mean that that is going to be a successful investment, right? And so I guess the thing is, like, in some ways, like, who gives a shit if you invest $20 into Dogecoin Girl or Dogecoin Chan or whatever her name is, right? Who cares? But, like, I think the bigger problem is when that becomes like, thousands of dollars, or my life savings is now in Dogecoin Girl Chan in Coin Musume because I want to love and support her. I don't know. Anyways, so I think that's like where I'm coming to the conclusion. A lot of this stuff is that like I'm curious about what gamified investment is and what people who engage with that want out of gamified investment, right? Are they looking to have fun? What exactly draws them to that? But then I also think about the dangers of it too, right? And, at one point, years and years ago, I applied to go work at a gambling company once. I live in Las Vegas, right? So there's jobs there. And kind of the key reason I wanted to go work there was to understand how they do these things with machines, like how do they manipulate these things. And I think the dumbass I put this on my actual job application, just like I kind of want to know about how this stuff works. And probably it's like you should not know enough or else that could be a danger, right, to us as a company. But I don't know, like I think there's like some things I would want to know about that. And I think for me it's like I need to know, because I need to know about how games change, what do games do to make you feel the way you do, right? And I feel like with gambling aspects of games have always been there, but there's something about it recently that I feel like has just been more and more prevalent. And maybe it's the fact that it is a direct correlation between putting money in a video game and getting like a loot box or something like that, right? Like the whole idea of gacha, spending $20 on like the 0.05% chance you might pull somebody. I don't know. I think there's a lot of things that I have a lot of respect for live service games. I think there's a lot of benefits that come with live service games. Even if it's like a nightmare that I don't know how we solve, how we get people out of certain games. Anyone needs to get out of those games, but how do you get people to stop playing a game for 10 years and put their money elsewhere, right? But I do have a lot of appreciation for them, but I feel like there's a lot of bad with them too. And I feel like part of this might be mixed into my feelings about character-driven gacha games and stuff, and how characters can manipulate you to do things, which is not necessarily a bad thing per se, right? Because I don't know, I bought Valkyria Chronicles on PS3 because Vice is in it, right? And is that technically manipulating me to buy a PS3 game? Absolutely. But I feel like I got my value out of it. Right? And so at the end of the day, I fucking love Valkyria Chronicles. But I feel like maybe with mobile games, the value does not feel apparent, right? When I give you $20 to give me Vice and whatever mobile game you have, A, I may not get Vice. B, what happens when I have Vice? Maybe a little bit of lore, right? But I don't know. It's pretty rare, I think, a game correlates its value very well with characters. I did not think I'd be coming into this discussion today talking about this, but I thought this would be a short segment about hey, weird, those publishers aren't there. We just got on this big, long thing. But I think that's where I'm at mentally with this stuff right now, which in some ways it has advanced for me mentally. So I think that's probably good. Probably good. It means maybe we can stop talking about this at some point. Although I think I still want to better understand why people invest in these continually still. But I think also the number of people investing in them are getting smaller and smaller and more niche. I could be wrong, but Hajime Tabata, reach out to me. Tell me. it'll be like, I've invested my entire company in this concept, so I have to do this or else my family doesn't eat. And I'll be like, totally understand, man. I get it. You have to feed your family, Mr. Tabata. And unfortunately, Final Fantasy 15 does not do that for you anymore. Let's talk about video games. I'm just rambling on. Creation of Dungeon. This is a tower defense doujin game, which is developed by Tokyo University's Tokyo University of Technology Creative Staff Club. Got it. There we go. And it's like a tower defense kind of game. And I think it's kind of similar to like one of those ones where you're the villain kind of thing. So you have a bunch of heroes coming into your tower and trying to basically reach the end of the dungeon. And so you have to place monsters and stuff in front of them to prevent them from doing so, or traps or turrets as well, and things like that. And then there's also like boss stages where you basically need to prevent all the little soldiers coming in and killing the boss and stuff like that. So you have like these very like traditional Dragon Quest looking RPG characters walking through your dungeon, and then you have to find different ways to place these turrets, traps, and monsters to stop them, basically. So it's nothing too crazy. I think most tower defense games have very similar approaches to how they work. But I think one of the big things with this game is that the monsters can move. So while you can build these like turrets that can't move and things like that, or traps that can't move, the monsters themselves, like slime, skeletons, ghosts, and things like that, those things can move around the field. And so you can kind of reposition them on the fly, chase down adventurers and things like that. And so it has a little bit more of a dynamic and more tactile feel to it, in terms of just like, you're not just like setting up your defenses and just watching and hoping it works out. You are also directly engaged with the game, and you're moving your monsters around. And it does mean that you can like put a monster in the middle of the field and then have him play a role in various parts of the field, whether it be, blocking a hallway somewhere, or maybe chasing down somebody who got past like a turret that you have, and then, trying to finish them off and things like that, and stuff like that. So it's a pretty cool concept overall. I'm not saying it's a unique one, but I haven't really played something like this before. So it's pretty cool to add a bit more of like a dynamic, more action-oriented feel to the stages and things like that. There's also like treasure around the map that the heroes can collect. So you can kind of go around and like put blocks in the way to prevent them from collecting the treasure if you want, because that treasure like buff them and heal them. But there's actually a good reason for you to let them get the treasure as well, because you get bonus money basically anytime you kill a hero that has been buffed by treasure. So on the top level of this game, we have that kind of like dynamic combat that's happening, with the monsters moving around in the game itself. But money management plays a really big role in this game. And that's, I think, in some cases true of all tower defense games. But in this case, it transfers over between levels. So if you finish a level and you only have like 500 gold, and then you win 500 gold from finishing the level, then you start the next mission with 1,000 gold kind of thing, right? So, and that's, in the case of this game, that's not really a lot of money to do anything with. And then whenever you buy and build something, as if you finish the mission successfully, the thing you bought and built, you don't get refunded for it. It is just gone, basically. So, and there's a lot of different things in the game that basically kind of prevent you from like really abusing certain types of units. So when you buy a single unit over and over and over again, the price of them, jacks up pretty substantially. So it's about kind of being creative and using these resources you have, the most diverse set of resources you have, in the most minimalistic way to basically make sure you are saving as much money as possible. So when you finish a stage, you don't leave with a negative income. When you finish a stage, you leave with the most money you can have to prep yourself, kind of thing. And so when you save that money, not only does it help you on the next stage where you can bring all that, where that's your money when you bring it forward. You don't get money at the beginning of the stages. It's just that is the money you bring forward. But also in the shops where you can buy or upgrade tools and things like that as well. So you can upgrade, different types of tools, or upgrade, their power and things like that, or buy, I never bought ghosts, but ghosts can basically live in or you can use ghosts as a monster type. And I believe they move around the field really fast and things like that. So they're very good and agile and able to like, disrupt enemy movements and things like that. So, that doesn't necessarily mean there's like a limited amount of money in the game. You can grind stages, and if you learn a stage really well, you can make it to be really profitable and basically grind money that way. So, if you really want to sit down and pull together funds, you can definitely do that. But the big thing is just making sure as you go further and further into the game, keep an eye on how much funds you have and to make sure you have enough money to actually, finish a stage kind of thing. So each stage has like different spawn patterns. So there's only like one door that enemies come in through, but they might come in blocks of 3. They might come individually. Some are different classes. So you need to worry about, if a ranger comes in, they do like these really high powerful shots that often one-shot your monsters. The mages can do AoE blasts that can destroy all your monsters in a row. So, a lot of times I would like to pile up slimes by the door, basically, to dogpile the monster or the enemies or the heroes as they come in. But then when a mage would come out, they would just nuke everything and basically have free reign of the stage after that, basically, and at least until the monsters could respawn and things like that. So I feel like there's a lot of nice little small touches to this game in terms of just like the level layouts, the pacing of the monster or the heroes coming through, the different class types that make every stage feel different, even if they have very similar shapes to each other. And there's also like preset traps on the stage as well, especially when they're like new traps. They like to introduce you to the trap on like a boss stage or something and show you what that trap does before you actually buy it and things like that. So it's a really good variety for what it is, but it's a very short game overall. It's about 16 stages, but it's I think a really good challenge overall, and I think about an hour long is all you really needed for it. I did take around 2 hours, but that's because I don't know what the issue is with this build, if there's been an update or anything. I couldn't find any other updates about this game itself, although I did find the developer did make another game on Steam, but the save file that I had somehow corrupted and got to like 21 gigabytes in size. So I lost my save file. But again, very short game, so it's not really a huge deal. At some point, I need to edit that together and make it into a video on the YouTube channel. I will say, if you've been listening for a while, you'll know this for a while. September was kind of the cutoff of like when the OCP Plus stuff I made earlier this year was coming out. So that is finally kind of ending the end of its road. So what that means is OCP Plus content will still come out. And, as I can make it, I'll definitely put it out as I can. But I had a particular part earlier this year where I wasn't really focusing on my big projects. And so I had a lot of time to focus on little projects. And so there's a lot of OCP Plus content that I kind of like backlogged. And over time, I've continued to work on stuff and kind of filled it out a little bit. But we are basically kind of at the end of the OCP Plus backlog stuff for the most part. So I have another doujin video game coming out in the next couple of weeks called Spin and Break. I think it's the same group, the technology or Tokyo University of Technology creative staff club, same thing, but it's like a breakout clone kind of thing. So that's not this week, but the week afterwards for that. It's got a really cool aesthetic to it. So that's coming out. We have the Bourbon Metaverse thing. So actually, quick side note, I did go back to the Bourbon Metaverse this last weekend as well. Some reason, someone, somewhere continues to update the Bourbon Metaverse. If you don't know what the Bourbon Metaverse is, check out the video coming out this week about that. But if you're up and up on the Bourbon Metaverse, they had their summer festival thing where basically there's a little island that was in the game or the metaverse for a long time, and there's a little like train rolling around it and stuff, and it's very small and cute. And I actually have a video of me sitting there like looking at this train and following it around this little plate island that's like, really small. You can finally, they finally gave it to us, what the Bourbon Metaverse fans have been asking for. They finally gave us the island. You can go on there itself. You shrink down, you walk around. You can't get on the train, but you can walk alongside the train and admire the bourbon snacks on the train. So check that out. The Bourbon Metaverse video, not including that update, is on there. But there's not anything really new there. It's just fireworks or whatever, which I think I posted on Twitter, like some of the video of that as well. I probably should upload it to the OCP Plus page because I think I uploaded my previous Bourbon Metaverse video stuff up there as well. So if you missed it, After School Simulator, I put out a video for that. Someone made a very good point that I was like calling it the school simulator genre. And there are some things about it that I call it, I think make sense of why I called it that. But someone pointed out, that's just kind of Goat Simulator. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you're mostly right. I think the difference is that Goat Simulator is more of a physics test kind of thing. Where this, I think, is more like planned chaos through theming and actions. If that makes sense. Either way, it is basically, yes, it is like Goat Simulator. So I sorry for misleading everybody and saying the school simulator genre. It is the Goat Simulator genre. The simulator genre, I just like, my brain did not make that connection whatsoever. So, but it makes sense. And then also I put up a video about me replacing a Nintendo 64 analog stick that kind of went wrong. So if you want to go check it out, see what happened in that video. It's a good time. An adventure happened. And I make a lot of noises in that video for some reason as well. So yeah. Thank you again, Demodori, for supporting me in the month of August. I really appreciate that. If you do support me on Ko-fi, you get access to 2 things right now. 1, the Phantasy Star Online video that I finished a while ago. The near final draft is on there. I did make an updated final draft, but it is basically the same video, but with like one slight alteration to plug the Phantasy Star Online podcast I did for Hot Pot Gaming. So what that means is that Hot Pot Gaming, there's going to be one coming out at the end of this month on the 30th. And I will be also that following week publishing a video for Phantasy Star Online, that video I made. So that is finally coming out. Although timing wise, it's kind of weird because I'm actually out of town when that happens. So I'll have to think about that. Hopefully it won't be too problematic. But yeah, anyways, that's the plan. First week of October, that Phantasy Star Online video is coming out. Check that out. But the second benefit you get is that my Nintendo video, I went ahead and recorded the audio for that and edited some music to it and stuff like that. It is not final in the sense of like, I listened to the script a few times and I recognize there are some things I need to change. Some of that is just like misspeaking and things like that. Some of that I just want to kind of change the tone on and things like that. But that video, the audio for it is basically done and finished there. So if you want to kind of see the general point of that video, you know, what the goal is and things like that, that is there for you to consume on the Ko-fi as well if you support me. Again, if for some reason you can't access it and you are a past supporter, let me know. I'd be happy to link them to you for supporting me because I don't regularly put out content. So I would like you to have access to that if you need to, if you supported me in the past. Is that it? Is that all the Ko-fi stuff? Again, thank you, Demodori, for your help and support. Yeah, that's that for the Ko-fi. The Nintendo 64 video stuff, I have been working on that more in general. But yeah, I guess there's not really anything to say about it right now. It's like, I thought maybe I'd be like, oh, let me talk about something. A little bit of that crypto rant I did earlier kind of comes from that video, I think, actually. Because I do mention that video about like investment gaming, but I think I hadn't really thought about what that meant at the time. I think I used that. I think I kind of like just kind of stumbled across the idea that like that was what I was interested in. And then I included it in the video without really knowing what that meant. Or rather what that meant to me personally. But you know, it's a pretty minor part of the video, so I don't think it actually really matters in the video. But I think it's just like me trying to decipher why I'm looking at that kind of stuff a little bit. And I think a lot of that might go back to Nintendo. Nintendo got me into crypto. No. Anyways. We got one last game here on the list. One last section. Hopefully I pronounce this like Ennichi no Tatsujin, which I think translates to like Festival Master. This is a 2006 Nintendo Wii launch title, actually, by Bandai Namco. And apparently, if you don't know, there's like 4chan in the US, right? That's based off a Japanese website called 2Channel. And they had a pretty infamous like Kusoge of the Year award that went on for a really long time. I think they finally stopped doing it because there's just so many games coming out, maybe. Or like also what a Kusoge is kind of has changed a lot. But this game was the runner-up for Kuso Game of the Year 2006, falling only behind Phantasy Star Universe. But, you know, I can kind of understand why they would come to that conclusion. This is a game very much from that era of publishers dreaming big on the Nintendo Wii, but only big in a very particular way. And that is, you know, basically in how you control the game. So what that means is you have these very like in-depth motion games usually, and then they get kind of bundled up in some very simple mini games overall. And so there's kind of like a disconnect between, I think, the amount of work that goes into how you control these games versus the actual substance of them. And I think they just didn't really know how to package them up. Like, how do you connect all these different actions that you want to test out? And like the easiest way to do that is in minigame fashion. And even Nintendo did this, right? With Wii Sports, right? But this game is styled in a Japanese festival kind of thing. So the whole concept of this game is basically you're going around to various booths at a Japanese festival, which if you've ever watched the anime, you'll generally know what's there, right? There's like gold fishing, pop gun shooting, yo-yo fishing, darts, making festival food, things like that. And it's all kind of dressed up in this Namco style with like these little Pac-Man rewards, Dig Dug rewards. And also I think it's kind of adjacent to the Taiko no Tatsujin franchise, so the Taiko Drum Master franchise. So I think aesthetically it has some similarities to that as well. So there's not a lot to do in this game in terms of the actual mini games themselves. And there's like pretty minimal variety. So what they do to kind of add legs to this game and to kind of make you engage with these mechanics a bit more in depth is they basically create different objectives around these mini games. So when you do these mini games, you have like, I'd say 40 to 50 different options you can choose. They kind of unlock as you go through kind of easy, medium, or easy, normal, and hard. And as you go through those options, they give you different objectives. So in the case of like the pop gun game, it's like, hey, shoot these specific targets or shoot targets that are only on the back row and things like that. In the case of darts, it's like hitting certain colors at certain points of times and things like that. And then like the crepes, you have different spreaders to spread the crepe on the little cooking pan thing. And so some of them have these really big spreaders and you try to not to get the dough to go over the side of the cooking pan. But at the same time, you also get the really tiny spreader that is like this little tiny thing, like the size of an ant that you have to kind of like move back and forth. And it's kind of a nightmare at times. So it would be nice because like you are kind of presented these games in a list and there's not really anything in the game to encourage you to kind of bounce around really at all. So I think a lot of times if you don't have the self-control to do it, and sometimes it's just not convenient to do it because like it takes loading times, menus to get between all the mini games, it can be easy to get kind of stuck in one mini game and just sit there and just do challenge after challenge after challenge of that one mini game. And some of these games just don't have the variety needed to be that interesting. Like the shooting game, like for the most part, the shooting game is pretty straightforward. You get these little pop shots, and then some of them curve left, some of them curve right, and that's basically from what is from the start, pretty much into the end, with just more restrictions put in place between time limit shots, individual things you need to shoot, maybe certain orders you need to shoot, and things like that. So it can get very samey as you go through it. And one thing that I really enjoyed that Ski did on the Wii is that, it built a world around these like different quest lines and different challenges, based around different types of games. So what that meant is that the way you were engaging with them was kind of as you naturally found them in the world. And then so they didn't feel as repetitive because you were finding them and playing them at that time. There's context for why you were doing it in that situation. And then you kind of moved around and explored the world some more and then found a new mini game. And it might be the same mini game you found before, but harder, or in most cases be a completely different mini game. And so you kind of finish off all your quests that way. And then when they updated Wii Ski to Wii Ski plus snowboarding, they took that away. And I feel like this game runs in that same problem Wii Ski plus snowboarding has, where it's just like a repetitive loop of all these mini games back to back to back, just slightly changing in how they integrate. But given there's like no world in this game, I feel like I can't really complain about it all that much. But the primary goal basically to go through these is to basically unlock prizes. So you're going through, you'll unlock these little figures that you can look at in a gallery with little descriptions. The game's in Japanese, so I don't know what they say in the descriptions. But you can look at the little 3D models going around. You can get different images for the gallery. There's like 15 pieces of art that are pretty cute overall that you can unlock. But most importantly, you get ghost cards. And these ghost cards, once you've collected them all, unlock the final mini game that basically acts as the final boss for the game and the end of the game for the most part. And that is basically hammering away on this on-rail shooter, which is kind of interesting because how it plays is actually similar to Taiko Drum Master, but instead of, hitting drums, you are hitting monsters in the world with hammers. And there's like some fun sound design in this mini game as well, where like you're in the haunted house and you can hear the footsteps going like as ghosts run around and things like that. And so most of the time they'll appear in different spots on the screen, but there are some times where they'll run by and just like make the noise and you don't actually get to do anything. So it's kind of like, it feels like a ghost house kind of thing in a really fun way, right? And ultimately, you kind of finish this mini game off fighting off various different ghosts, and that kind of is the end of the game to some extent. There's no, as far as I can tell, no real absolute like credit sequence per se in this game, but collecting all the prizes and things like that seems to be the real appeal. But I didn't really have the patience to do that. A big part of why is because of the controls itself. Now, I want to say in a very positive way, first and foremost, about the controls here, is that when you make a Wii game, a lot of times I think it's about making sure it feels like your hand, if you're gonna focus your Wii game around motion controls, making sure your hand feels like it's directly interacting with that world. And how you do that can be done in a lot of different ways, right? Obviously, I think a lot of people agree Wii Sports, despite what people eventually figured out, like, oh, you just waggle in Wii Tennis and do a bunch of stuff, right? But people, when they first started playing Wii Tennis, they could feel that connection between how they move the controller and what happens on screen, right? And how Wii Sports kind of contextualizes playing all these mini games is through you being at like, a sports gym, training gym, and sports thing kind of thing. And so this game, I think, does a very good job of replicating Wii Sports in the sense of like creating theming around all these different types of games. Being at a Japanese festival, it asks you to make these really big moves that kind of replicate these different activities you do at a Japanese festival. I've never been to one myself, but when I think about being at a carnival and things like that. And as you do these kind of like, things like, fishing for the yo-yos, you're kind of like dipping the Wii remote down with the button being pressed in, and as you pull it up, that's kind of like you gripping it, and then you kind of like tilt the controller upward to slowly bring it up in a way that, with the hook that's been like, the paper hook that's been like soaked with water doesn't break. So it's like very gently pull the Wii remote up. And that just like works really well. And it just very smoothly comes up, right? And the pop gun, obviously the IR pointer on the Wii remote is not necessarily 100% there, but the feeling of, basically being able to move the gun around and shoot at things. And then also, you can kind of move the gun back and forth into the screen in a way you can't do in a lot of other shooters on the Wii. So you can kind of like bring the gun back or bring it forward and kind of like change, how the power of the shot impacts the arc of the bullet. Cause there's a little like, it's just a bottle cap, right? So when you shoot, there's like a trajectory to it. And if you ever watch an anime, at least, and I'm not saying anime is 100% relevant and realistic to real life, but you can see like the kids that will basically like throw themselves over the table and like put the gun out as far as they can to try to get as much power and leverage out of it as possible. And this game kind of like has some replication of that, where you can kind of pull the gun back and forth, things like that. It's a lot of these things that are just really nice touches that I think really kind of bring you into that experience and make you feel like you are interacting with a bunch of Japanese festival games in real life kind of thing, right? And I think the theme also works really well in some of the games themselves, being like very novel ways to get you to do certain things. Like there's a rhythm minigame basically. And the rhythm minigame is actually a balloon tying minigame where you can tie balloons. And so how you're scored in the minigame is actually not based off a score, it's based off of how many balloon animals you've made and like how well they turned out and things like that. And so your score is like, hey, did you make 2 balloon animals? Congratulations. Did you make 3 perfect balloon animals? Congratulations, right? And so while that maybe hurts the replayability from the stance of like, oh, I wish I knew how many like bads, misses, good, greats, or whatever like a more like, bigger rhythm game would have, right? That's not what this game's trying to do, right? It's trying to do this very like Japanese festival thing. And I think theming it all within like, somebody there twisting balloons and things like that, I think is a really fun way to do that. And in a lot of ways, this is one of the closest non-Nintendo products I've seen to kind of like reach this approach. Now, I think the challenge they run into, and I think this is something that I would be curious if I went back and looked at all Nintendo games if they did this or not. But, I think the number one mistake any Wii game can make is asking for precision. Especially when you're looking at these big motions. And this game asks for a lot of precision. There's the gold fishing minigame where you have a little paddle, kind of scoop out the fish in very particular ways, with different sides of the panels at different angles as far as I can tell. And that all just kind of falls apart with the Wii remote. And, I will say this. I have had wireless interference in my apartment before, so part of it could be that. But when I looked at videos of people online most of them seem to be struggling with a lot of very similar issues I did, where, there's just a very specific set of criteria the game's looking for in terms of where you're pointing the controller. And then also there's just sometimes where you'll be sitting there perfectly still and the Wii remote just does something in terms of like in the game and stuff. And it's like, oh, I'm doing the rhythm mini game and I messed up this whole balloon because all of a sudden it just like twisted when I wanted to tie it instead or something like that. Right. And it's just kind of frustrating. And so, you have this great experience where you are doing all these motions that replicate all these things that kind of relate to real world things that you could be doing. And it does a really good job of putting that in a theme and a style that I think really connects with you as the player. But I think it's just really challenging to get over that when, every 5 minutes, the controller goes on the fritz and you just basically have to start that mini game over. It's just frustrating. Obviously you're going to fail in these kind of events in real life, but one is, a technological failure, while the other one is a failure on your own part. Right. And so I think one of the smart things Wii Sports did was I think it covered a lot of that stuff up by not asking for precision. There's a lot of flexibility in how you, move that controller. Now there are like little mini games and stuff in Wii Sports that definitely ask for more precision, but I think when it comes to the core action of swinging the remote, adding tilt, things like that, right? And like, where you punch enemies and things like that in the boxing game and stuff. I think they just add a lot of wiggle room for the motions themselves to work, where this game I think just doesn't do that sometimes. That being said, it is a very cool game. And, it's not as good as Nintendo's stuff of this era, but it really captures that really early launch spirit on the Wii of just like, what can we do with this controller? And obviously the technical limitations of the Wii are well known today, but it is just like really exciting to see this game go and try to do a variety of different like, interactions that you just don't really see with the Wii remote in a lot of games, where it's like you're doing these different motions that just don't typically come natural with the Wii remote. But that's what makes it all the more exciting, because it is using the Wii remote in like really unique and maybe not unique, but like distinct ways that I think is just like really creative and really does a great job of kind of putting your hand into that game itself. It's just sometimes your hand like, flips out and then like throws the little goldfish out of the pond or whatever. I don't know. You can't do that, but you'll break your goldfish paddle because the game just like thought the Wii remote was somewhere else for a second. So, but yeah, it's got like a fun like Taiko Namco aesthetic to it to boot as well. So, anyways, I think, in my opinion, very far from Kusoge of the year, but I understand why. It was a full price video game. It is essentially like 8 mini games, and they're all very similar to each other, and the controls are finicky. So I can definitely see why somebody would sit down and say like, wow, this is awful. But I think there's just a lot of things I really came to love about it and really appreciate about it. And obviously that doesn't erase the things that, does cause that problems. But yeah, anyways. That's it. That's my name. That's my name, Ben. I said that second. I need to look at a calendar to figure out exactly what's happening here, actually. So I will do another podcast on the 23rd with you guys. So I'll do that. And then after the 23rd, I'm going to be out for PRGE for a little bit. But I think I should be back. Let me see, 23rd. The podcast on the week of the 7th might come either late or I'll pre-record something. One of the two. We'll figure it out. But anyways, that's going to be it for this week. Thanks for coming. OneControlBoard.com is the website. Check it out. Like I said, we got the Bourbon Metaverse video coming out this week. Check that out. The week after, we got Spin and Break. But if you want something to watch today, After School Simulator video, Doujin game is out if you want to check that out. And then also the Nintendo 64 analog stick replacement. That is an hour-long session of me falling apart live in the moment. So if you want to see that, see a man suffer as he manhandles the analog stick in the background. There you go. That's the life you're gonna live. So, anyways, thank you guys so much for coming this week. I hope you guys have a great couple weeks. Bye.